I had just rinsed my breakfast cup when I heard the knock. Steady. Too familiar to be a stranger. I opened the door and there she was. Iris. My daughter. 8 years, 8 Christmases, 8 birthdays. Gone. Now she stood on my porch, thinner than I remembered, hair tied back like she used to in high school. Her eyes filled before she spoke. "I'm sorry, Mama." Her voice cracked. "I've changed. I want to take care of you now. You shouldn't be alone anymore." I didn't answer right away. My hands tightened on the doorknob. Then I stepped aside. She brought in flowers. Cheap ones from the corner store, still damp in plastic. She set them on the counter like she'd done it every week for years. I made tea. My hands trembled so badly I spilled a little on the stovetop. She didn't mention it, just walked around the house touching things. Her fingertips grazed the old piano, the photo frames, the hallway where we used to mark her height. "It looks the same," she said, smiling, like that was a good thing. That night, she insisted on making dinner. Nothing fancy, just soup and toast. She brought the tray to the living room, and we sat together, the silence heavy, but not bitter. Not yet. She told me stories, how she'd lived in Denver, then Phoenix, how she'd thought about coming back 100 times, how ashamed she was for what she said that night, the night she left. I nodded, but I didn't speak much. I just listened. I didn't ask why she hadn't written even once. I didn't want the answers. Not yet. When she went to bed, I stayed in the hallway, wrapped in my old shawl, watching the light under her door. I wanted to believe this was real, that she came back for me, not because she had nowhere else to go. But I knew myself well enough to recognize it, that hope in my chest wasn't comfort. It was a warning. The first few days moved gently, like old music playing low. Iris cooked breakfast without asking. She folded my laundry, even re-washing a blouse I'd long given up on. At night, she brought a warm cloth to my feet and rubbed lotion into my hands the way she used to when she was young, when the world still felt full of afternoons and lullabies. She laughed more now, or maybe I'd forgotten how her laugh sounded. She asked about the neighbors, my old book club, even the garden she once called a waste of time. I let her sit beside me on the porch, where the wind curled around the railings. I told myself this was healing, until I saw the drawer. It was in the study, an old cabinet where I kept little things, letters, stamps, trinkets, too sentimental to throw away. The drawer was open, just slightly a corner of the velvet box poking out. I reached in. My necklace, silver with the pressed lilac charm, was gone. "I moved it to your room," Iris said, when I asked. She smiled like I'd caught her mid-surprise. I nodded, pretending it was fine, then checked my room that night. It wasn't there. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Maybe I had moved it and forgot. Maybe I dropped it behind something. I spent the next morning organizing drawers I hadn't touched in months, pretending I was spring cleaning, though it was nearly fall. Later that week, I passed the safe in the hall closet. The handle looked slightly turned. Not open, but not how I left it. I placed my hand on it, then pulled it away. That evening, I tried logging into my online banking. The screen flashed red. Incorrect password. I tried again. And again. Iris walked by holding a glass of water. I asked if she'd changed it. She shrugged. "You must have forgotten." I smiled too. Then I reached for my old notepad in the kitchen drawer, the one where I still write things down by hand, just in case. I still remember the day Iris didn't come to her father's funeral. She didn't call, didn't send flowers, just silence. I sat in the front pew, gripping the handkerchief he once tucked into his coat pocket, hoping for something, anything that would tell me she still cared. But there was nothing. After the service, I wrote her a letter. I never mailed it. What was the point? She made her choice. She'd vanished and stayed gone, until last week. When she appeared at my door crying, I didn't ask why it took her so long. I didn't mention the funeral. I didn't even ask where she'd been. I just opened my arms and pulled her into them. That's the part that shames me most. How quickly I said yes. I gave her the guest room, the one under Henry's paintings. He painted all through the first 2 years of retirement. Landscapes mostly. Barns. Wide, empty fields. That room still smells faintly of turpentine and wood polish. She didn't seem to mind. Now she spends hours behind that door, talking low into her phone. When I ask, she smiles and says, "It's a friend helping with job leads. It's hard to start over, Mama." She adds as if I wouldn't know, but I hear more than I should. Numbers. Dates. A name, Sloan Realty. My heart slows every time the words drift through the wall. Last night I passed by to turn off the hallway light. Her door was cracked. I peeked in. She was asleep, one arm across her chest, the phone still beside her on the quilt. It buzzed once, lit up. Before I could talk myself out of it, I stepped inside. My hand moved on its own. I picked up the phone. No passcode. Just the screen glowing with a message waiting to be read. I hesitated, breath caught in my chest. Then I tapped it open. The message glowed against the dark like a wound that refused to close. "She's soft now. If I sell by end of month, it'll cover most of the debt." I read it twice before the meaning settled heavy and unmistakable. My thumb hovered over the screen as another message appeared beneath it. "She still doesn't know. The place could sell for at least $400K. The phone felt colder than my hand. I placed it back on the quilt, careful not to disturb her. Iris didn't stir. Her breathing stayed slow, even. Peaceful. My body moved without thought. Step back, closed the door, walk down the hall. I reached the bathroom and turned on the faucet. Water rushed out cold enough to sting. I splashed it over my face, then looked up. My reflection seemed unchanged. Same tired eyes, same lines, same mouth drawn with age. But something behind the face, something I'd carried for years, shifted. Or snapped. I dried my hands and sat at the kitchen table. The house hummed with nighttime quiet, the kind that once comforted me. Tonight, it pressed in too close. I took out my notebook, the small one with the stitched spine I'd kept tucked in a drawer for years. I opened it to a blank page. The pen shook at first, then steadied. Bank contacts, deed papers, attorney, storage options, transportation, who to call, who not to call. I made the list straight down the page, no flourishes, no wasted space, simple steps, one after another as if preparing for a storm I had already stepped into. I didn't sleep. The night carried on around me, silent and indifferent. I stared at the list until the ink settled, until my breathing did too. By dawn, the light had begun to gather at the edges of the curtains. I folded the notebook shut, set it beside my cup of cold tea, and felt the first outline of a decision forming. I went up to the attic before sunrise, notebook still in hand. Dust rose with every step. The air smelled like wood and time. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just a place where my hands could be busy while my heart settled. But then I found the old file box beneath a folded quilt. Inside, between tax forms and faded photos, was the letter I wrote to Iris the week after Henry's funeral. I never mailed it. Maybe I'd been too proud. Or too hurt. But I kept it like I was waiting for the right moment to decide what kind of mother I still was. I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was shakier than I remembered. "Your father asked me to protect you." I tried. I gave up more than you'll ever know. But who protects me now? I sat down on the attic floor and read the rest. Every sentence landed differently now, heavier, sharper. I wasn't mourning anymore. I was awake. After a while, I went to the study and opened the bottom drawer of Henry's desk. The deed was still there, untouched. I'd meant to transfer it years ago when I thought maybe Iris would come back and stay for the right reasons. But I never did. She didn't know that. That afternoon, I went to the bank and opened a new account. Quietly. I moved what I could, just enough to disappear if I had to, enough to start over if this house stopped being mine. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Teresa, the widow of Henry's old colleague. She sold homes, now worked privately, under the radar. We met at a cafe 2 towns over. I told her I was only curious. She didn't ask why I wasn't using my daughter's contact. She just nodded and offered to run an estimate, no pressure. I agreed. By the time I got home, Iris was already back from the store, cheerfully setting groceries on the counter, like nothing was unraveling beneath her feet. I told Iris I had an early doctor's appointment and left before she was up. The roads were quiet, and I drove with the window cracked just enough to feel the cold air on my knuckles. The senior community sat behind a row of pines near the edge of town. Modest. No waterfalls in the lobby, no concierge. But the hallways were clean, the staff greeted me like I wasn't invisible, and there was a humming quiet that didn't feel lonely, just steady. I met with a woman named Carla. She handed me a clipboard, answered my questions with patience, then walked me through the place like it was a secret she wanted me to feel part of. There was no marble, no chandeliers, but there was a garden and a small library and a corner room facing west with afternoon light. I signed the paperwork that day, paid the deposit in full from my new account. Carla squeezed my hand and said, "You'll like it here." No one knew. Not Iris, not the neighbors, not even the post office yet. The next morning, I returned with 2 boxes, one labeled kitchen, the other marked books. I slid them quietly into the new closet. A staff member passed me in the hallway and called me by name. Back home, Iris was in the middle of rearranging pantry items. "You know what would make this place really shine," she said. "Repainting. Something light and fresh. Adds value." I nodded. "That sounds nice." She smiled and pulled me in for a kiss on the forehead. "You're going to love this new life, Mama," she whispered. And in a way she was right. But the life she imagined me in, the one with polished counters and for sale signs and buyers walking through the front door with tape measures, that wasn't the one waiting for me. Mine had already begun quietly in a sunlit room across town. And tomorrow, I'd bring my dishes. I woke before the sun and didn't turn on the lights. I moved by memory every drawer, every cupboard, every floorboard that creaked under the wrong step. I made breakfast like always. 2 slices of toast buttered while still warm. Black coffee. I drank mine slowly, watching the steam rise and disappear. Iris had gone out early for groceries. She said she wanted to make something special for dinner. I said that sounded lovely. The kitchen was quiet, except for the occasional hum of the refrigerator. I washed my cup and dried it with the same dish towel I'd used for years. Then I set it back on the counter and opened the hallway closet. Inside was the bag I'd packed the night before. 1 coat, 2 dresses, my best shoes, and the shawl Henry gave me for our 30th anniversary. I didn't need much more than that. I stood in front of the mantel for a long time. Family photos lined the top: birthdays, graduations, a Christmas we spent laughing too loud. I left them all except one. I reached for the frame with our wedding photo. Henry in his suit. Me in my simple gown. We were smiling like the whole world had just opened. I wrapped it carefully in a dishcloth and placed it in the bag. At the kitchen table, I folded the letter. Short. Honest. No bitterness. I set it beneath the cup I'd used just slightly askew so she'd notice. Then I walked to the door. No suitcase rolling behind me. No slammed hinges. No goodbyes shouted into empty rooms. Just steps. Steady. Quiet. When I arrived, the woman at the desk smiled like she'd been expecting me. My room was warm. A quilt waited on the bed. A small window overlooked the courtyard. There were leaves starting to turn, rustling gently in the breeze. I sat down, hands folded in my lap, and listened. It wasn't silence that hurt. It was silence that held me. Iris came home just after noon, arms full of paper bags, keys jingling against the doorknob. "Mama," she called, once, then again louder. "You home?" No answer. She stepped inside, set the bags down on the counter. The air felt still too still for a house that usually hummed with radio static or the creak of my old slippers on tile. That's when she saw the cup and the folded letter underneath. She pulled it out, unfolding the page quickly at first, then slower as the words began to land. "I'm sorry I raised a daughter who could look her own mother in the eyes while hiding things. I believed your return was a miracle. Maybe it was. Even if it wasn't real, I imagine her standing there, the words catching in her throat. I imagine the moment her eyes lift from the paper and scan the room, searching. She went through the house, checked the closet where my coats used to hang, opened drawers that once held scarves and spare keys. She pulled open the bathroom door, then the back porch, then the attic stairs. I wasn't there. She found my bedroom almost untouched bed, made dresser drawers mostly empty now, the jewelry box gone, the safe locked. And none of it, not one tile or document or account, was in her name. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the quiet. I wonder what she thought in that moment, if she was angry, embarrassed, or just surprised that I still had it in me to act before she could. Maybe she expected me to be grateful, to sit quietly while my own life was sold out from under me. She never understood kindness isn't the same as weakness, and silence isn't always surrender. She sat down at the table where we once played cards and read the letter again. Then she looked around that house like a stranger searching for something that wasn't hers to keep. I didn't see it, of course, but I could imagine how quickly Iris moved once she realized I was truly gone. My phone buzzed for hours at the senior residence calls, voicemails, messages that grew from confused to frantic. I didn't answer any of them. Eventually, the buzzing stopped. Later, I heard from Teresa that Iris had shown up at the bank. She'd demanded access, insisting she was helping me manage my affairs. They told her politely that no such authorization existed. She hadn't been added to anything, not a single account, not a single document. She left the bank red-faced and shaking. Then she tried the realtor she'd been whispering with, but the house had already been sold by the real owner. The listing was gone, and the new owners would be moving in soon. By evening, Iris was back in the kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd smiled at me over steaming soup, where she'd reached across the table and called me Mama, like it meant something. Now she sat alone, staring at the letter I left under that cup, reading it, then folding it, then opening it again. The refrigerator light spilled out when she opened the pantry. That was when she saw it, an old drawing yellowed around the edges, still pinned behind a box of tea. A picture she made when she was maybe 7. A little girl holding her mother's hand, both of them drawn with crooked smiles and sun-bright hair. She touched the paper like it might crumble, and then she cried. Not the loud kind of crying she used to use to get what she wanted. Not angry crying. Just quiet, leaking tears that finally broke through something she'd been pretending wasn't there. She didn't cry because she lost the house, or the access, or the plans she'd been stitching together behind my back. She cried because for the first time in far too long, she understood exactly why she came home and why I had to leave before she took the last pieces of me that remained. The next morning, while she sat at that table with her childhood drawing and my letter, I woke early in my new room and began making tea. I straightened the photo on the dresser. It tilted every few days, no matter how I positioned it, like it didn't want to settle. In it, I'm holding Iris on my hip, Henry beside me with one hand on my shoulder. Her cheeks are round and smudged with cake. His tie is crooked. My smile is still young. I look at it sometimes when I close the curtains at night, not with bitterness, but with something softer. A kind of understanding that grief can grow around joy and not erase it. Some days are quiet enough to feel hollow, but they're not empty. The silence here is different. No one paces outside my door. No one shifts drawers or changes passwords. No one smiles while stealing. On Tuesdays, I go to the gardening class. I've planted 2 small containers herbs mostly, not because I need them, just because I like watching things take root. In the afternoons, I read by the window in the common room. Light slants just right at 3. If the day is clear, I can see the gate at the edge of the property. Sometimes I watch it for longer than I mean to, not waiting, just remembering. The staff calls me Miss Quinn. They say I make the best tea. I don't correct them when they say I'm easy to care for. They don't know how much work it took to become that way. I wrote Iris another letter last week, folded it, tucked it into the same notebook I used to list my escape. I didn't send it. I've written enough. There's peace in silence when it isn't forced on you. My name is printed on the brass plate beside the door. Maristella Quinn. No hyphen, no extra names, just mine. It's the first time in years I've had a room that belonged only to me, and no one waiting to take it.